Welcome to the Doghouse Podcast. On this week's episode, we got Scott Kennedy from Falcons SI, Auburn SI, and Gators SI. We talk about the big question, will Georgia have a spring game this year? I'd like to know that myself. Also, will the Atlanta Falcons ever draft another significant Georgia Bulldogs player? And is Hugh Freeze and Billy Napier on the hot seat? We answer all those questions. And as always, make sure to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. That really helps out. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Doghouse Podcast. Scott Kennedy from the Sports Illustrated Atlanta Falcons also does a little bit of Auburn Tigers and Florida Gators. How are we doing today, Scott?
I'm doing good, and a little Atlanta Braves here and there. So man of many parts, they like to say. So
yeah, he's the man.
I get bored doing one thing. I gotta spread it out just a little bit.
There you go. I hear you. Yeah, first off, since it is Georgia, I know it's the off-season Georgia-related podcast. Any of the Georgia players stand out at the recent Senior Bowl? I know you had some of that on your channel, and just wanted to see on that.
Yeah, I haven't gone through. I haven't posted. I've been so busy. I haven't posted it as quickly as I normally do. So youtube.com/Scott Kennedy. I usually post between 80 and 100 highlights from Senior Bowl. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to butcher names because right now I'm just reading them. I haven't listened to them as much. But Smail Munden looked really good in coverage. One of the better coverage guys out there. Just looked very comfortable and very relaxed because it is a awful situation to be in those situations as a linebacker. It's like, okay, I'm out here one-on-one with a running back, no pass rush, no safety help, and I've got to cover 20 yards to either side of me. Good luck.
Right.
And he actually did really well. I'm like, if you can find anybody that can even stay close to the running back in that situation, I think you've got something. He did really well in coverage. Etienne looks really good out there too. Easy to catch the ball and moved really well out there. It's hard with running backs and linebackers to really scout them unless you see them hit or being hit. You don't really know what you have. But Arian Smith looked good at wide receiver too. It was funny. I posted a couple of his clips making some really nice catches, and some of the comments from Georgia fans on my channel are like, oh, sure, now he's starting to catch the ball. So I guess he might have had drop problems when he was at Georgia, but he had a good week. I've seen him day 3. He had a good week down there in Mobile.
Yeah, no, Arian Smith. I don't want to take a jab at the guy because he was always didn't cause any problems at Georgia. I think he stayed his 5 or 6 years or whatever it was. Probably one of the faster guys on the field, but he did have his issues with the drop, so that's where it came from. And Georgia leading the college football in 38 drops this past year, so that's a little sensitive for Georgia fans. So yeah, glad to hear that. I saw Arian Smith catch the ball, so I hope somebody picks him up, and I can see him maybe late round or free agent or special teams guy. I mean, he's definitely fast, so hopefully. And then Trevor Etienne, I know if you didn't hear, he initially said, hey, he's going to come back at Georgia, and then later chose to go to the Senior Bowl and go pro. So Georgia fans were a little salty on that, but I hope
he's changed his mind more than once along this process, hasn't he?
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's crazy times. Next one is, if you haven't read or thoughts, because there's this big trend going around on are some of these teams not going to have a spring practice or a spring game? And what's your thoughts on that? I think Texas is just saying, hey, we're tired. We played a long season way up into January. Also, Nebraska's coach, I should know. He used to coach with the Panthers. Why is not coming to him dead?
No, I was about to say Patricia, but that's not the right guy. He was the old Baylor coach.
Yeah.
Who came into the Panthers, and now I'm
Matt Rule. Is it Rule?
Yeah.
Matt Rule.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, Matt Rule.
Yeah, I should know that.
R-A-U-L-E.
Yeah, he doesn't want anybody tampering with his players. And I think they're not going to play. I just hate to see it. I know I can see where they're coming from, but I'm like, if they don't have spring practice, are these guys going to even be in shape? And are you going to get evaluated? Or I hate that it's changing. It's going to NFL light, NFL juniors are calling it, but I don't like it. But I didn't know if you had any thoughts on. Are they going to have spring practice?
I've got a lot of thoughts on the business of college football. Hell, in my freshman year at Auburn in 1991, my first English class, I wrote a paper on why college football players should get paid. So that was when you hit your 40s and 50s, you always lose a decade. So I'm like, yeah, so that was 20 something years ago. I'm like, no, wait, carry the one. That was 30 something years ago in 1991. That's how long I've been on this, but they've overcorrected. What they need to do is go to multi-year contracts, and that would solve a lot of things. You shouldn't have to constantly be recruiting your own guys over and over and over and over again. But what was BS was the ability is like, okay, I'm cutting you, but now you have to sit out a year. That was ridiculous. I was like, oh, wouldn't that have been fun in high school where I could just say, hey, we need to break up, but you can't date anybody else for a year. Yeah, I mean, that's asinine. So they've overcorrected, needs to be fixed. I think spring practice is huge. You see how many of these guys started entering early because of the becoming early enrollees. You used to get maybe 2 or 3 guys a year that would do that. Now it's like 2 or 3 that don't. So just getting acclimated to school, acclimated to the practice schedules, getting on the field, getting some live reps, even if they're walkthroughs, I think is so important for the younger guys and the new guys for that matter, which is 50% of your team these days. Between if you sign 25 guys and pull 10 out of the portal, 35 of your 80-something scholarships are brand new players. So I think you absolutely need the spring practice, even if they remove hitting, just to do walkthroughs and like no contact OTAs. I think it's important for them to be out there and just learning the terminology, learning the plays. I think it's imperative.
Yeah, I completely agree. Especially quarterback, like you got a freshman coming in and just learning the playbook. And you always heard in the past all these players, hey, I'm glad the early enrollees showed up for spring practice. They were so ahead of everybody else. So I hope this isn't a trend, but I can't. Maybe they'll NCAA. They don't make any decisions. Maybe they'll say, hey, if you want to have spring practice, have it. If you don't, just hey, that's up to you.
Yeah, what do you do? You can't force me to practice.
Exactly.
No, I think it's interesting where it was. I always called it the unholy coalition. The football has been monopolized in this country because it's the only country that does it. Right. So you had the NCAA and the NFL working hand in hand to monopolize the game and the rules and the talent and the product, which is the players. And now they're in competition with one another just a little bit. They're in competition for players. It's like, wait a minute, I wanted to try and get Carson Beck in the 3rd round, and now he's off the board. It's like, well, this is screwed up. Or, what happens when Caleb Williams says, I don't want to go to the Chicago Bears. I'll go back to USC and get $15 million. And the Bears are like, well, we just tanked the whole last of our season so we could get this guy. Right. So they're in competition a little bit. I think it's going to be a little bit more of a relationship like you see with baseball. And baseball is how the draft absolutely should be and has had it right for years and years and years when it comes to, the players having – I don't have to give up my eligibility to see if you want to take me or not. Right. Putting all the risk on the kids instead of the billion-dollar industry was stupid also. Right. In baseball – I can draft you 5 times. It's up to me to convince you to come to play for my organization if I draft you, not the other way around.
Right. Yeah, completely agree. I just hope they don't change that. Also, another question. I know you follow Atlanta Falcons and me being a big-time Georgia fan, so I got to ask this. Why don't the Atlanta organization, Atlanta Falcons, draft more Georgia players?
I don't know.
And
I don't know. There's not always a fit there. I mean, obviously. I refrained from using in writing, throwing Georgia fans a bone when they took 3 guys on, the 6th and 7th round the last couple of years.
Right.
But, this goes back a long, long time. One of the most egregious was, Hines Ward goes in the 3rd after Dan Reeves takes Jamie German. I mean, that was German had, I think, 200 yards total receiving when he left the NFL, and Hines Ward was Hines Ward. So, I don't know. And that's kind of one of the jokes this year at the Falcons is sitting there at number 15. There could be a couple of Georgia guys there that fit basically any defender right now. It fits. So you could talk about Michael Williams. You could talk about Starks, and then Walker are all 3 guys that could fit at that number 15 spot. So we always have to joke when we put it on social media. Oh, yeah. Well, first off, they're not going to take an edge. That makes too much sense in the 1st round. And they're definitely not taking a Georgia player that high, which I think the highest player they've taken in the last 50 years, I think, was Akeem Dent, linebacker who was from Atlanta. So I don't know. That's my answer. Why not? It's not always going to be a fit, but it seems like they kind of go out of their way not to, and I don't know why.
Completely agree. And Raheem Morris even came out and said, hey, I like what Kirby Smart's doing in Athens there when he came in. So everybody's like, hey, they kind of perked up a little bit. So, yeah, my mom's a diehard Georgia fan. She's always like, look at all those went to Philly, and you saw what they did. And Jalen Carter, it's always been frustrating. Like, at least give them a look or anything. But,
yeah, the big one there for me where the Falcons were picking, I go back to, I've been doing this, will be my 5th draft since I've been covering the Falcons again. So basically came in the same time as Terry Fontenot. And, the one that really made sense, but there's questions, could the Falcons really afford to take the risk on Jalen Carter? Jalen Carter was high risk, high reward.
Mm-hmm.
And they need a defensive line. And no, you don't necessarily take a running back in the top 10 in the NFL. That's what the analytics experts will tell you. But does Jalen Carter going to be the same guy in that he is in Philly and Atlanta if he's still that close to Athens? If you have concerns about some of his friends being around, did he need to just get away from those guys? I would have liked to have seen him being mentored by Grady Jarrett, by Calais Campbell, by David Onyemata, 330-something pros in the Atlanta Falcons defensive line. And there's no doubt what's more valuable, an all-pro defensive lineman, which is what the Philly, I call them the Phillies every freaking time, what Philly has with Jalen Carter, or a Pro Bowl running back. Well, that's easy. We'll look at who gets paid more. Let's look at who gets drafted higher. Typically, the defensive tackle is more valuable. That said, the Falcons, if you draft good players, you're going to be a good team typically, and they did a good job with Bijan Robinson's a good pick at 8.
Okay, gotcha. And other question I did want to ask, so are they going to re-sign, since he's a Georgia guy, Lorenzo Carter, you think he comes back?
That's a great question. I probably wouldn't. He's been okay. I was covering recruiting when he was coming out. I'm pretty sure he went to Norcross. Just, everything you're looking for. When you talk about the look test, here he comes. 6'5", 240 pounds, lean. And he ended up being a pretty good player at Georgia and has been a pro for a long time. He's been in the $4 to $5 million range, which is about right. I think the Falcons need to just overturn basically the entire edge room. The one guy they have still under contract, Arnold Ebiketie, will be entering his 4th year already. So he's in the last year of his contract. A lot of Falcons fans, it's the unknown, the popularity of the backup quarterback filters to other positions. And a lot of Falcons fans want to say Braylon Trice. Oh, don't forget about Braylon Trice. I'm like, first off, when you draft an edge rusher, a premium position in the 3rd round, you're not counting on them to be an impact player. You're hoping, you hope some of those guys turn into it, but you're not counting on it. And you're certainly not counting on a day 2 edge rusher coming off a season-ending knee injury in August to be an impact player. So I think Matt Judon will not be back. I think Lorenzo Carter probably won't be back, but we'll see.
I just like to have him back because he's a dog. But yeah, I completely agree. And got another big question for you right before that. But I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, BeavisKeelerShelter.com. 0 carbs, 0 sugar. Great on the golf course coming up. Spring break's coming up. You can check it out. My personal favorite is the watermelon. Also like the elderberry and huckleberry. For 20% off, Doghouse 20. 20% off Doghouse 20. Check out BeavisKeelerShelter.com on Instagram. Also, they have their YouTube channel. But this would be great for some of the Falcons fans getting ready for whatever picks that author blank and those guys pick. And rolling into that, if you were in the war room or whatever they call it coming on, you had the pen, as they call it, what would be your pick at 15 if everybody's available?
I hate the phrase best prospect available because that makes it sound like it's a certainty.
Right.
Best player available. It's like, oh, you're going after the best player available. What are the odds you're actually going to get the best player available? The odds are pretty low. The odds, I'll take the field. I'll take the 200 guys that go after you. Mm-hmm. That one of those guys is going to be better. So I usually like to say best prospect available, at least some uncertainty in there. So I would go the best prospect available on the defensive side of the ball for the most part. I don't think that there's a wide receiver in here that makes sense, but for a premium position, yes, you could use a number 2. Darnell Mooney had a career year last year. Can he keep that up? Ray-Ray McCloud at slot. Drake London is really good. But you're basically, they've built their entire hopes. Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot, they're all in on Michael Penix Jr. I mean, they went unconventional is the nicest way I can put what they did last year with the quarterback position, by signing a $90 million guaranteed quarterback, and in Kirk Cousins, who gets $90 million guaranteed, might be 100 if he's not gone by March 17th. And then redshirting their entire rookie class. That's unheard of. So they're coming out saying Michael Penix, Michael Penix, Michael Penix, Michael Penix. Well, they need Michael Penix to succeed. So offense isn't completely off the table, but they've got 1 first-round draft pick on the defensive side of the ball in the last 8 drafts, and that's AJ Terrell. Everything else has been offense, and it shows. They've been either 30th, 31st, or 32nd in sacks 3 out of the last 4 years. Haven't had a top 10 defense since, I think they've had 2 since 1980. It's time to put some time in. Right now, the guy I kind of focus on is Mike Green. I think he's got a chance out of Marshall. He led the nation in sacks this year. Good size, has a chance to be available. But again, I've said that premium position is important. You don't want to waste your rookie contract on a turn a tight end like Kyle Pitts making $8 million into one of the highest paid tight ends. You want to get value on your rookie contract. That said, if Malachi Starks, if you believe that he is a guy that can be the next Kyle Hamilton at 15, then pairing him next to Jesse Bates makes a lot of sense. The Falcons have openings on every level of their defense. They can use an interior defensive line. They can use an edge. They can use an inside linebacker. They need at least 1 corner, and they need a partner for Jesse Bates. So if they get the best guy on the defensive side of the ball, he should be an instant starter.
Yeah. That's awesome. Love that breakdown. How about if Mykal Williams is there at 15?
That would be for sure. Him, Walker, Starks, I think all 3 of them are on the table. I'll feel better about where I am as far as which guys I want basically next week. As we get through the combine and start getting into pro days, I'll start circling back and looking at all these guys. I've been through Senior Bowl guys right now, or the guys that I know better, and which usually isn't a lot of the first round draft picks.
Right. That's great. Yeah, I'd love to see more dogs out there, of course, but just make a good educated pick for your Falcons. I go defense, but we'll see.
I heard one conspiracy theory. Someone said, "Oh, they don't want the extra pressure if they have to cut the guy." Well, that's BS. And 2, you're already getting pressure for not taking any of them.
Right.
So that doesn't make any sense. I'm not buying that.
Right. And then, because you mentioned him earlier, and I know everybody was kind of wondering, what do you think needs to happen, or will happen with Cousins, or what's the best move?
I think he's cut in the next 2 weeks. They don't want to pay. It's very similar to Russell Wilson's situation. There's 2 differences that I'll get into, but they don't want to pay him another $10 million. If he's on the roster in 2 weeks, I think March 12th is the deadline, then he gets a $10 million roster bonus for 2026. So it counts next year. That would turn him from a $90 million guaranteed contract into a $100 million guaranteed contract. And everybody that looks at spreadsheets or whatnot, or plays Madden, thinks, well, why not just keep him as a backup? You need to keep backups anyway, because this isn't accounting. The financial of this is already a disaster. This is more like a divorce. Yes, a divorce is expensive, but I don't want to have this toxic relationship between me and my wife / partner around the kids. That is bad. This is going to cost us some money, but we need to make this separation. Kirk Cousins has already gone out to Radio Row in the Super Bowl and already started chirping a little bit. It will be a very bad situation, and you don't want that around Michael Penix Jr. This is your franchise now. I don't think everybody else that knows that will sit back and wait for him to get cut. Oh, we'll trade him to the Browns. They need a quarterback. Well, why would the Browns trade for him when they can just sit back and wait and sign him? He has offset language in his contract, meaning if he's cut, any money that he gets on his next contract kicks back to the Falcons, just like Russell Wilson. That's why Russell Wilson signed for $1.2 million with the Pittsburgh Steelers last year, because that money went back to the Denver Broncos. He wasn't doing the Denver Broncos any favors, and he wants every available dollar going back into the team that he's on. He doesn't want a draft pick going to the Atlanta Falcons when it could be used by the Cleveland Browns, used by the Raiders, or whoever else has him. So he would try and he's got a no trade clause. He would execute that, make them cut him. If the Falcons want to pay him $40 million next year to be, it's 27.5, it would be a cap hit of 40. They can. That's the only leverage they have to mothball him and just basically have him go practice with the reserves. Or you can save $10 million and move on, which is much more likely to happen in the next 2.5 weeks here.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I'm with you. Yeah, kind of move on. It's like a bad divorce. Hey, let's
This is a relationship thing. This isn't fine. It's like, well, it makes more sense. No. Don't try and make sense of the dollars and cents, because none of it. It's all bad. You have flushed $90 million down the drain. It's all bad. Now, don't screw up your team chemistry too.
completely agree with that. And then I know you follow also you follow Auburn and Florida. So a couple of those questions. First with Auburn, I know that's a big question. Smoking hot seat for Hugh Freeze. And what's he got to do to keep his job? And is he?
I just looked it up this morning because I'm like, I can't imagine an Auburn coach has gotten a third year after 2 losing seasons. Most of them don't get through a losing season, let alone 2. So, I was in school when Pat Dye was there and Terry Bowden was there. Is when I went to Auburn. And hell, Bowden didn't even finish the first season that he was losing, and he was gone. Long story short, it has been since 1976-77 that a coach has gotten a third year after 2 losing seasons at Auburn. It's been 50 years. So, yeah, the seat's hot. He has to win, and not just have a winning season. He needs to probably win 8 games, probably 8 and, that would be 8-5 at the worst, if he's going to see year 4 of his contract.
I'm with you on that. I think if you go 8 wins and beat Bama, that'll be sweet in the Iron Bowl.
Yeah, that would.
He's a quarterback away. He's missing a few.
And they've got to get. There's no guarantee there, and I hate anything when it comes to coordinators. They had 3 people calling plays last year. 3, and I don't mean like different times during the season. I meant during a game. They had 3 different guys calling plays. How the hell is that going to work? No wonder Peyton Thorne looked confused every time he dropped back the pass or was looking for a play. That's got to change too. You keep it simple, stupid.
I agree. I'm surprised he's not calling the plays, but I think he's a quarterback away. Peyton Thorne hadn't been it, and I'm not sure why they didn't go to transfer.
But is Jackson Arnold the guy? He's. If I was being negative about it, I'd say an Oklahoma washout. Is he the guy? They brought in a little bit of insurance with a kid from Stanford and Wake Forest, I think, is where they brought him in. So they brought in 3 in the transfer portal, and then they've got a freshman in Deuce Knight that could be really good. The problem is he won't be able to. He can't afford to see Deuce Knight develop. In year 2, 3, 4. He's got to win now. Again, it's been 50 years since an Auburn head coach has gotten a third year after two losing seasons.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah,
and part of that is because, they're a top 15 program all time. They don't typically have 3 losing seasons in a row, but it's happened. And pretty much you'd see 8 wins, 9 wins, 11 wins, 4 and 8 fired, new coach.
Right.
That goes from Bowden to Tuberville to Malzahn. And then, Harsin was just bad completely. And that's one. Harsin was so bad. That's one of the reasons Hugh Freeze is getting a third year to try and build things back up a little bit. And from a talent perspective, he has, but what does that matter if you don't win, for one? And for 2, you're like, oh, well, the new coach will come in here and clean that up. No, these guys can leave right away now. If the coach leaves, the kids can leave now too.
Yeah, I agree, man. As I said, dead man walking. And then another one that I thought he was going to get canned last year, and I wanted to ask Billy Napier, who trended at the end and did well, but I think he's got his whole wagon hitched to the DJ Lagway. But what do you think he needs to do and stay? And is this the norm for Florida football now? Hey, 7-8 wins, that's where we're at.
God, Lagway is so good. He really is. He is so good. Just watching him as a talent evaluator from, I was director of scouting at Scout for over 10 years, just watching how he plays the game. He's the truth. I mean, he should be, if he continues on this pace, he's going to be a number 1 overall pick. He is that good. Now, a lot was made of the Florida Gators schedule last year, and it's the toughest schedule in the nation by far. And frankly, the SEC wasn't very good last year. We saw it in the playoffs. I saw it watching Auburn. I'm like, all right, this Auburn-Georgia game is close. Auburn's awful. I mean, they are awful. This game shouldn't be close. If this is a Georgia team that we've seen for the past decade, this is a 40-point game, okay? And Alabama was down. Tennessee was okay. They weren't great. So Oklahoma in the toilet. Auburn, bad. This was not a good conference. So I don't think Florida's schedule was as hard as it was made out to be. That said, it says a lot to me that those guys kept together, because we had basically pre-written the story of we just waiting to hit publish on when Napier is going to get fired. He was gone. He was gone by Halloween. And it says a lot to me that those guys kept playing and playing hard for him. And they got some results out of it. Now, was that just, a false dawn? We'll see. But, they ended up closing on some pretty good players. And there's no reason why Florida should ever be an 8-5. Not with the resources around there in that school. They shouldn't, 8-5 shouldn't be the norm down there at all. He has got 1 year left to prove it too. Absolutely. But, having that quarterback's a good start. It's not as important as the NFL as it is in college, but he's a difference maker. DJ Lagway is good.
Yeah. You think he's got to get like 10 wins or better to stay, or what do you think?
I don't know. I don't know what the number is with that. And sometimes it's who you beat. I don't know the schedule off the top of my head, but circling back to Auburn, it's like, well, you went 8-4. I'm like, yeah, but you went 4-4 in conference, and you lost to Georgia, Alabama, and LSU.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to cut it. That's not going to keep you in your job. So, we'll see. And it's like, oh, you beat Alabama. Well, that's great, but what's Alabama next year? We don't know. I mean, they shouldn't fall down to the days of Mike DeBose and Mike Shula. But, beating Florida State last year, yeah, it was fun. That ain't going to save your job. Not the way they were. So a lot of it depends on what everybody else looks like too.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Appreciate that. Yeah. Appreciate you jumping on today. Scott, how do we find you on all your social media?
Yeah, there's several ways. You can find me at youtube.com/Scott Kennedy is the best way for me. And then on Twitter, at just @Scout Kennedy. When I was at Scout, someone says, well, you should be Scout Kennedy. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So I changed it. So you can find me there, and love hearing. I'm a Georgia boy at heart, maybe not a Georgia Bulldog, but definitely a Georgia boy. So I keep an eye on my guys like Low Carter coming through and all that stuff and baseball and whatnot. Got another couple going through Georgia high schools. So you can find me and love the conversation.
Yeah, definitely check him out on YouTube. Hey, over 7,000 is impressive. And he's got a lot of followers there on Twitter as well. And he's got Falcons SI, Gator Illustrated, and Auburn. So yeah. And he'll have a lot of content coming up to the draft and the combine.
Yeah, we'll see how the Georgia guys do. I'm looking forward to seeing them go. And again, it makes sense to me, even at safety. Well, I can sit here talk about premium positions and whatnot, but Malachi Starks at 15 wouldn't be the worst pick in the world for the Falcons. Can they afford? Can Terry Fontenot afford to go tight end, running back, safety in 3 of his 5 drafts in the top 15? I don't know, but it wouldn't be completely out of the question.
Yeah. Appreciate you coming on, and be excited to see what the Falcons do at 15. If you're still around, make sure to like, subscribe, share the Doghouse podcast. It was a pleasure having you on, Scott.
Thanks for having me. Look forward to doing it again.
You too. Thanks so much. Have a good day.